Have you found that the climate change denial movement has subsided recently? I've just noticed that people who talk about climate change denial are often ridiculed or set aside. People aren't just listening anymore. It seems as though the buy-in for climate change has increased for the general population, and that's a good thing. However, there are still systems in place that are encouraging people to deny climate change and offer misinformation to various social media platforms. And in one case, Google, the YouTube platform that Google owns, was found to be monetizing videos where climate change misinformation was being perpetuated. Over 100 videos featuring deceptive content on tackling climate change. So Google apparently updated its policies in October 2021 to prohibit ads and monetization of content contradicting the scientific consensus on climate change. However, examples of videos violating this policy still ran with pre-roll ads. We're going to talk about that on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean. And it's really interesting. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about Google and YouTube and social media in general and how creators get monetized. Not from a marketing standpoint and, hey, you should become a creator because you can make money off of it, although it's a newfound job that people can do in entrepreneurship. But there are some downsides to it. And the systems that are in place seem to be controlling, the messaging that comes in. We've seen a lot about, freedom of speech. We've seen a lot about how platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram perpetuate misinformation. There's a crackdown that's coming or that has arrived on perpetuating these articles. Because let's be honest, I remember when in the early 2000s when blogs were being introduced and it went crazy, and you had wonderful sites that were offering great journalism, and it almost gave journalists who were independent a platform to be able to cover their own stories. Just like social media today has provided a platform for a lot of creators to have their own voice and create their own businesses off of what they want to create. And we've seen some amazing creators that have come out here, including in the marine science and conservation field. But when blogs that come in, there's always bad with the good. When you have amazing journalists that write up articles and that do their fact checking and their sources are on point and it's not about an editorial, but it's like trying to be unbiased, you have that. That's a great thing. However, just like anything else, people can ruin anything by offering their own biases, by offering a way to manipulate the message. And that's been going on for decades that we know of anyway, probably for centuries. Newspapers have different headlines depending on where they're publishing their newspapers. I think it came out a while ago, the New York Times had different headlines for the Midwest customers compared to somewhere in New York or in the Northeast. And it was all based on what the bias is and what pleases the people who are reading the newspaper so that they have an idea of, what they like, what articles they like to read. Well, the same thing happens with social media. You see, we are influenced by social media, not only by influencers, but just by the algorithm. I remember learning about the Facebook algorithm and all the other social media algorithms where if they see something that you like, or you say you watched a video or you engaged with a post on Facebook or any other platform, the algorithm sees that. It's like, oh, you like, watching dolphins swim bow riding on boats. Okay, we're going to go find videos that do the same thing and we're going to send you some. They're going to be different and they're going to be from different creators, but we know you like this stuff, so we're just going to keep offering it to you. And so if you engage with a post that has misinformation in it because you like the outcome or you thought it was interesting, you're going to continue to get that misinformation. And that's from a basic sort of description of how social media has come to play. And with all these blogs that have been created and continue to be created, and articles that are created, you probably noticed it as well. Blogs get picked up where it's like, I don't even recognize the URL for this blog. Like, I see a headline and I see the URL underneath. I'm like, where is this coming from? And depending on the headline, depending on the article, it may or may not be true. It may be misinformation that people are sharing. That's often the case. They may do it. The people may do it on purpose, but a lot of the times they don't realize it. For instance, people sharing the ocean cleanup project. It's a clear scam. It's a clear project that doesn't work, but people continue to put money into it because it gets great press every once in a while. But not a lot of people talk about the negativity about it unless you go look at the blogs like Deep Sea News and so forth. But that gets shared all the time. And when, scientists and conservationists say, hey, you know what? It actually doesn't work like they say it does, and there's some dangers involved and from a conservation standpoint, people get angry at you because, no, this article is from whatchamacallit, and it's a reputable site and things like that. So everything, I guess my point is, everything has a bias, and misinformation is really difficult to weed out from an algorithm standpoint. And now we're looking at videos where people are creating videos on YouTube, on TikTok, whether it be long form or short form, right? Short form would be things like Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. And then the long form would be like Twitch, which is usually live, and you have YouTube and so forth. Maybe Vimeo every once in a while. But you're getting people who are going on, and just like I do talking heads every once in a while on YouTube of the podcast. I record the podcast, and you get people who are talking about various important topics to them. And so on one side, you have people who are trying to reduce climate change and trying to get people to sort of understand what's happening with the planet and how you can protect the planet, which is very similar to what I do. And on the other side, people who believe that climate change is not real or that we are not affecting the climate are talking about sort of the what's wrong with climate change and the movement and vilifying people like 16-year-old young women from all over the world and so forth, and attacking them, and people are believing it. People are making it political. They're not making it scientific. They're denying everything that's happening to communities all around the world. And they're just saying, hey, that's just a natural occurrence. We just have to succumb to it. And it's not because of us or fossil fuels or this and that. And I think the world from a top down, so from like the UN, UNDP, the IUCN, all these international bodies, and then a lot of the countries, most of the countries have signed on to these agreements, the Paris Accord, they've the Conservation for Biological Diversity. All of them recognize that climate change is a thing. Not only is it a thing, but it's something that we need to do something about because we are being affected by it every single day. And that's sort of what the consensus. And so there's been a lot of, when you look at sort of what the consensus is and then what people are talking about on the platforms have been held accountable for the amount, what they support in information. And this is how it works. When social media platforms, the way they make money, say like YouTube, for instance, which is the subject matter of this article that I'm talking about, which I'll put in the link in the show notes, it is all about monetization. So Google or YouTube makes money through ads. They sell ad space on videos, and companies and people will pay for those ads. Like I can make an ad for how to protect the ocean, and I will pay Google for the amount of times they put me in front of a video, right? And I haven't done it in a long time. I don't know if I've ever done it on YouTube, but there are certain criteria that you can choose as a company to be able to advertise on videos with YouTube. So it goes on, how many videos do you want to be on? How many clicks are you willing to pay for if people click over? All that kind of stuff. Then they give you information on it to see how successful the ad is in terms of how many people are clicking on to go see your videos or your podcast or things like that. And that's great. Like it's a nice platform to do that. But I don't want to be on a platform. I don't want my ad. If I create an ad for this podcast, I do not want people to click. I don't want to be on an ad for people who have videos on for supporting fossil fuels or denying climate change, right? That's something that I don't want my ad to be associated with. And the thing is when you're a creator, you get paid a certain amount of money for every time an ad has been viewed on your site. So Google or YouTube, it's Google anyway, offers up an ad space, right? The company pays for that ad space. Then the YouTube finds, through the algorithm, finds a good spot to put this ad based on your criteria and your likes and dislikes. And then that ad gets shown. But companies are being held accountable on where their ads are showing and what they're supporting. We've seen it now. People call it cancel culture, but companies do not want to be associated with something that is negative, right? So a video that's talking about murdering people, they don't want to be associated with that. People who are talking about sort of anti-trans, anti-gay, things like that, they don't want to be associated with that, right? There are a lot of criteria now that, companies are being held accountable for, so they have to do their due diligence to make sure that they are on platforms and videos, their ads are being shown through videos that, they support, or that not on videos that they don't support. Now, here's the situation is that there are videos where the creators talk about climate change misinformation, offering climate change misinformation, climate change denial, essentially. So the way that those creators are being supported by YouTube is they keep coming back and they keep putting on that platform because they get paid. There's an incentive there. If I ever get monetized, and on YouTube, if you get monetized, you have to have a certain amount of subscribers, minimum of 1,000 subscribers, and you have to have at least 4,000 hours watched in a span of 365 days. If you get that, you get monetized, meaning YouTube starts putting ads on your videos. And then for every ad that's being offered and however long it's clicked on or however long it's watched, you get a certain amount for that. It's not a lot, and you have to have a lot of views and things like that. However, that's what comes up. So there's an incentive to continue to post. You can build a business on that if you get enough. Now, you can talk to a lot of creators out there, and it's, people are like, you can't really live off of that YouTube money unless you get really, really big, but you're still getting money. So there's an incentive to continue to post because you are still getting money. You want to keep those watch hours, you want to increase. And once you get part of the monetization program, it's easier to get views and you're offered up a lot more in terms of in front of people and so forth. So just by being part of that monetization program, you are being supported by Google for the message that you're putting. So just like companies who are buying ads, where they're worried about which ads they're in front of or which videos their ads are being served on, Google has to worry about what ads that they're putting on and what those videos are about. And in 2021, according to this article, October 2021, the company came out with updated rules and policies saying, hey, we're going to prohibit ads and monetization of content contradicting the scientific consensus on climate change. That was an actual policy. But the problem is, as of April 2023, there are still monetized videos promoting climate change, climate crisis misinformation. This is on YouTube videos. That's a problem for Google because now they're supporting misinformation. Look, I'm not going to say that this is not a difficult thing to do from an algorithm standpoint, going through all the content from everybody and looking at what words kind of filter out as being climate change denying. It's got to be a difficult thing, but this is also YouTube and Google, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company, probably $1 trillion company. I don't know. Regardless, they have the money and the means and the people to be able to create these algorithms, and it's their responsibility to ensure that they are not promoting bad things, or they're not promoting videos that manipulate the minds of people into thinking of something else. I understand that a lot of you might be like, well, that's very contradicting. It's a very contradicting statement, and I get it. Freedom of speech is a whole thing, and it's very difficult to navigate on the on the platforms that are out today, right? And how so many people are using them, right? And so many people are offering up videos, it becomes a really difficult thing to manage. But this is one of their policies. It was a Google policy that they put forth, and they're looking at as well as 100 videos featuring deceptive content on tackling climate change. That's what was reported by an organization that looks at climate change misinformation. So there are organizations, this is how important it is, there are organizations that look for where people are offering climate change misinformation and highlighting those videos and saying, hey, Google, you need to worry about this because you're monetizing this. There was an ad on these 100 videos. I don't know how many creators are involved in those 100 videos, but it seems like it's more than one, let's just say. It seems like. So we're in a world where climate change is kicking our butts, and we need to do something about it. And the first thing we need to do is get rid of the manipulation and the misinformation. And now I'm saying this knowing full well that we've been manipulated and misinformed about climate change for decades, multiple decades, right? Even when climate change was being sort of conceptualized and understood, we have been manipulated from the fossil fuel industry. Companies have admitted of paying for scientists to put out articles and putting out marketing campaigns that fuel climate change misinformation and climate change denial. And I mean, you can see it in politicians today. There was an article a while ago a couple of weeks ago, I think when I was away, I was reading it. In Texas, they're a Republican state, and the state of Texas is a Republican state. And so it's dominated by Republicans. And so it's a small government, right? Because that's what Republicans are. They're conservative, so they want a small government. So it's easy for businesses to come in, like fossil fuel companies to come in, and they don't have a lot of red tape. They don't have a lot of regulations that they go through, and it's easy for them to set up shop. So the solar industry, which is predominantly in California, or maybe even started in California, there's a big industry in California, decided, hey, you know what? Like, there's a lot of regulations in California. It's a Democratic state. There's more regulations. That's usually what the trend is. But in Texas, there's not that many regulations, and we can probably get a lot more done. There's a lot more space and a lot of desert to be able to put up solar panels in there, and we don't have a lot of red tape to go through. So they're using sort of the small government aspect as a way to kind of move in, to be able to set up shop a little more. And now some of the politicians in Texas, who are probably allegedly supported by fossil fuel industry, are seeing this and saying, whoa, like, why are these guys coming in? Should they really be coming in? Shouldn't we put regulations on the solar industry? Right? So, conservative governments, Republican governments would like small government so that they allow private businesses to flourish. Capitalism, right? Well, when a private business that comes in and flourishes, but it's not what they want or what they quote unquote say their citizens want, which is usually the people who support them, well, now you're looking at, oh no, we need to regulate this industry because we can't just let them go and do whatever they want. But that's the whole idea of small government. So I find it really interesting, the way things continue to happen today, where there's systems in place that support what is happening now. There are systems in place that allow for us to continue on with our lives because we don't like a lot of change. And what's really interesting is over this course of this week, I had a really interesting conversation with a colleague of mine. He's actually probably my boss. He's high up in there, great guy. And we were chatting and we were talking about, he was talking about how, to do conservation, we just need to blow up the system. Not literally, but figuratively, in terms of looking at the way we live, looking at the way we work as a society, and look how wasteful things are. Look how the way we conduct things. We just need to almost like start over. It's very similar to like when I watch the Maple Leafs with friends and family, and we're like, hey, if they don't get past the first round of the playoffs again this year, after what, 20 years, which they did, thank God, we need to blow up this team and we need to start all over because this is not working. We dominate during the season, and then when we come in the playoffs, we lose in the first round. We need to start over. So it's a really interesting concept of what, the systems that are in place right now, especially for the environment. I mean, you can say this about a lot of things, human rights and everything like that, are set up to stop progression and conservation from happening. So we need to sort of redo the system. We need to sort of kind of blow things up and say, hey, let's restart on this, or let's take it from the ground up and be like, we need to redo this. We need to rethink the way we live. And I just think that's a really interesting concept, because the way the systems are in place right now is almost like we need to rethink the way we do business. We need to rethink the way we live. We need to rethink the way we do politics. Take the money out of politics and see what happens, right? Do you think people will just be, just like out there being so hypocritical? Do you think that would happen if they weren't supported, if they weren't getting money for their campaigns to help them get in power? I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Let me know what you think. I thought it was a really interesting story just in terms of how Google's still monetizing these channels and these videos and making, basically incentivizing them to continue. Whereas if you don't get monetized, maybe you're not as much likely to continue, although I'm not monetized and I continue. So, but why is this organization, why is this company supporting that by paying them to put up these videos? So it's one way to look at it. I'd love to hear your way of looking at it. You can get in touch with me at How to Protect the Ocean. Just to let you know, a lot of people are connecting with me lately. I've had a lot of people reach out to me through Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean, and I'm loving it. It's so much fun. I've got to meet a lot of you who've been, listening for months, for years, even for a couple of weeks, and I really appreciate it. I answer everybody as fast as possible, and I love having these conversations. And if you want to come on the podcast to talk about your conservation journey, even your thoughts on this podcast or on anything else in the world about marine conservation and conservation in general, hit me up. Look in the show notes. There's a Calendly link to book a time to be on the podcast, and I'd love to hear from you. All right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of How to Protect the Ocean. This has been a great time. I'm your host, Angelo, and have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.